Imagine this. You reach for your phone before your eyes have fully opened. Your hand knows the exact distance from pillow to nightstand, fingers already shaped to cradle the glowing rectangle that has become an extension of your nervous system. In those first seconds of consciousness, before you've even registered your own name or remembered what day it is, you're scrolling. The algorithm knows you're awake. It's been waiting. Now, freeze that moment, hold it up to the light and examine it closely. What exactly just happened? In the space between sleep and waking, that liminal threshold where humans have historically experienced their most profound moments of clarity, where mystics encountered the divine and poets heard the first whispers of creation, you reached not inward, but outward. Not toward stillness, but toward stimulation. Not toward self, but toward the infinite algorithmically curated stream of other. Here's what's truly unsettling. You didn't decide to do this. The reaching was automatic, precognitive, a reflex as involuntary as breathing. Somewhere in the architecture of your being, in the neural pathways that define who you are, a new pattern has been written. A pattern you never consciously chose to install. But let's go deeper, because this isn't really about phones. The phone is just the most visible symptom of something far more profound, something that would have been incomprehensible to any human being who lived before the digital age. We are the first generation in human history whose inner lives, our thoughts, desires, attention, memory, and sense of self are being actively and continuously shaped by entities that are not human. By systems designed not to serve our deepest needs, but to capture our attention, predict our behavior, and monetize our existence. Consider this paradox. You are more connected than any human in history, with instant access to all of humanity's accumulated knowledge and to communicate with billions. Yet you feel more alone. You have more information at your fingertips than the greatest scholars of antiquity could have dreamed of. Yet you feel more confused. You have more entertainment options than any emperor or pharaoh ever commanded. Yet you feel more restless, more dissatisfied, more hungry for something you can't quite name. What if I told you this isn't a coincidence? What if the very technologies promising to enhance your life, expand your capabilities, and connect you to the world are simultaneously hollowing out something essential at your core? Not your productivity or your social skills, those are just surface manifestations. I'm talking about something deeper. Your capacity for sustained attention, your ability to sit with uncertainty, your tolerance for boredom, which is actually your tolerance for being alone with yourself, with the rawness of unmediated existence. Every time you feel that itch to check your phone, to refresh the feed, to see what's new, to escape the present moment, you are feeling the ghost pain of your rewired soul. Like a phantom limb, you're experiencing the sensation of something that used to be there, the ability to simply be without needing constant external stimulation to validate your existence. The question isn't whether technology is changing you. That ship has sailed. The question is, are you changing into something you would choose to become? And here's the more disturbing question. Do you even remember who you were before? Can you recall what your attention felt like when it was yours alone, not fractured into 1,000 fragments, each owned by a different app, a different notification, a different dopamine trigger? There's a war being waged for your soul, and most people don't even know they're soldiers. The battlefield is your consciousness itself. The weapons are invisible, disguised as conveniences, as connections, as necessities. And the tragedy is this. You're not being forced to surrender. You're being seduced into volunteering, piece by piece, moment by moment, scroll by endless scroll. The most terrifying part? By the time you notice what's been lost, the old you, the you that existed before the rewiring, might be too faint a memory to recover. Like trying to remember a dream after you've been awake for hours, the contours of your original self grow hazier with each passing day, each passing notification, each moment you choose the screen over the silence. So let me ask you directly. When was the last time you sat in complete stillness, with nothing to distract you, and felt entirely at peace? When was the last time you were genuinely bored and didn't immediately reach for your phone? When was the last time you had a thought that wasn't interrupted, a feeling that wasn't immediately shared, a moment that wasn't photographed? If you're struggling to remember, you're beginning to understand the depth of the problem. And if something in these words has stirred something in you, a recognition, an unease, a whisper that says, "This matters," then perhaps you're ready to go deeper. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, not because I'm asking you to, but because truth shared becomes truth amplified. Subscribe if you want to keep confronting these uncomfortable revelations, because we're just beginning to excavate what's been buried. The algorithm will try to distract you before this video ends. Don't let it. To understand what's happening to you, we need to excavate beneath the surface of daily habits and peer into the architecture of human consciousness itself. Because what technology is doing to your soul isn't random. It's exploiting fundamental features of how your mind works, features that evolved over millions of years for a world that no longer exists. Carl Jung understood something crucial about the human psyche. We are not unified beings. Within each of us exists what he called the collective unconscious, ancient patterns, instincts, and drives that predate individual consciousness. For millennia, these deep structures remained relatively stable, shaped by the slow evolutionary pressures of survival, reproduction, and community. But now, for the first time in human history, these ancient patterns are being hijacked at scale by systems that understand them better than you understand yourself. Your brain's reward system, the dopamine pathways that evolved to reinforce behaviors essential for survival, like eating, mating, and social bonding, is being artificially stimulated hundreds of times per day. Every notification, every like, every new piece of content triggers a micro-hit of dopamine. Your neural circuitry can't distinguish between the genuine social validation that kept your ancestors alive in tight-knit tribes and the hollow simulacrum of validation you receive from strangers liking your photo. The reward feels real, so your brain treats it as real, and slowly, inexorably, it begins to crave it. But here's where it gets philosophically darker. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about becoming human, all too human, about the danger of reducing ourselves to mere reactive creatures, slaves to stimulus and response. He spoke of the will to power, not as domination over others, but as the drive toward self-overcoming, toward becoming who you truly are. Technology, in its current form, inverts this entirely. It doesn't ask you to overcome yourself, it asks you to reveal yourself, to express yourself, to share yourself, but always within the parameters it is designed. You're not becoming more, you're becoming more legible, more predictable, more manageable. Arthur Schopenhauer understood that beneath conscious thought lies something more primal. The will, a blind, insatiable force that drives all living things. He saw suffering as intrinsic to existence because the will can never be satisfied. Each fulfilled desire immediately gives birth to a new one. Now, imagine this ancient truth weaponized through algorithmic design. The infinite scroll embodies Schopenhauer's nightmare perfectly. An endless cycle of desire and temporary satisfaction where each piece of content promises fulfillment, but delivers only the need for the next piece. You are trapped in what he called the pendulum of suffering, swinging between the pain of wanting and the boredom of having, never finding rest. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, discovered something profound about human nature. We can endure almost any suffering if we have meaning, but we cannot endure meaninglessness. He called this the will to meaning, arguing it was the primary driving force in human life. Look at your screen time. Look at the hours consumed by content that, if you're honest, means nothing to you. You can't even remember most of what you scrolled through yesterday. This is the digital age's unique form of suffering, not the acute pain of deprivation, but the chronic ache of meaningless consumption. You're busy, stimulated, entertained, but somewhere deep inside, a voice is screaming that none of this matters. Jean-Paul Sartre insisted that existence precedes essence, that you are not born with a predetermined nature, but must create yourself through your choices. You are your life and nothing else, he wrote. But what happens when your choices are no longer fully your own? When the architecture of your environment is designed to nudge, manipulate, and predict your decisions? When algorithms know what you'll click on before you do? Sartre spoke of bad faith, lying to yourself about your freedom, pretending you have no choice when you do. But we're now facing something he couldn't have imagined, a world where the line between genuine choice and manufactured desire has become so blurred that even the concept of authentic decision-making is in question. Alan Watts, bridging Eastern philosophy and Western psychology, warned against mistaking the map for the territory, against confusing our abstractions and symbols with reality itself. He spoke of how we live in our heads, in our concepts and labels, rather than in direct experience. Technology has taken this tendency and amplified it to an almost pathological degree. You don't just experience a sunset, you photograph it, filter it, caption it, and wait for the validation. The actual sunset, the raw, unmediated experience of color and light and the feeling of the day ending, becomes secondary to its representation. You are living increasingly in a world of symbols about life rather than in life itself. The deeper issue is what philosophers call intentionality, the mind's fundamental characteristic of being directed toward something, of having objects of consciousness. Historically, you chose what to direct your attention toward. Your intentionality was yours. But now, your intentionality is being outsourced. Systems more sophisticated than you can comprehend are deciding what appears in your field of consciousness, what you think about, what emotions are triggered, what desires are cultivated. The sovereignty of your inner life is being quietly transferred to external entities whose goals are not your flourishing, but your engagement. Aldous Huxley, in his dystopian masterpiece, Brave New World, didn't envision a future where people were oppressed by force, but one where they were controlled through pleasure, through an endless supply of distractions and superficial satisfactions. He saw that the real danger to human freedom wouldn't come from those who banned books, but from those who ensured no one wanted to read them anymore. We're living in Huxley's nightmare, but it's worse than he imagined because the soma, the pleasure drug that kept his fictional society docile, is now customized to each individual's psychological profile and delivered directly to the device in your pocket. This is the hidden problem. Technology isn't just changing what you do, it's changing what you want. It's not just affecting your behavior, it's reconstituting your desires at their source. The person you are becoming, more distracted, more anxious, more dependent on external validation, more unable to tolerate solitude or silence, isn't the result of your choices. It's the result of thousands of micro-choices that were architected for you, designed to feel like freedom while actually constraining you within an ever-narrowing corridor of possibility. And here's the most insidious part. This rewiring feels natural. It feels like it's just who you are, how everyone is, the inevitable result of modern life. The invisibility of the process is precisely what makes it so dangerous. You can't fight an enemy you can't see, can't resist a change you don't recognize as change. If this is making you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the price of awareness. Hit that like button, not for me, but as a small act of resistance, a tiny signal to the algorithm that content like this, content that actually makes you think rather than just keeping you numb, deserves to survive. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Consider it your commitment to staying awake in a world designed to keep you asleep. The forces we're about to expose don't want you to see what comes next. The rewiring of your soul doesn't announce itself with dramatic fanfare. There's no moment where you wake up and realize you've become a different person. Instead, it happens in the margins, in the small deaths of capacities you didn't know you were losing until they were already gone. Start with attention, the most fundamental currency of consciousness. Your ability to focus, to hold a single thought or task in your mind without fragmenting, is deteriorating at a rate that would have seemed pathological to previous generations. Neuroscientists have documented this with disturbing precision. The average human attention span has dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to 8 seconds today, less than that of a goldfish. But these statistics don't capture the phenomenological reality of what's happening inside your skull. Your brain is engaged in what psychologists call continuous partial attention, a state where you're never fully present anywhere, always monitoring multiple streams of information, always ready to shift focus the moment something more stimulating appears. This isn't multitasking, it's continuous task switching, and each switch carries a cognitive cost. Studies show it can take up to 23 minutes to fully return to a task after an interruption. Now, count how many times your phone interrupted you today. You're not working on tasks anymore. You're perpetually recovering from interruptions, living in a permanent state of fragmented consciousness. But the deeper consequence isn't just that you can't focus, it's that you're losing the capacity for what philosopher Martin Heidegger called dwelling. The ability to be fully present in a moment, to let an experience unfold at its own pace, to sit with complexity without needing immediate resolution. Reading a novel used to be a form of dwelling. You entered a world and stayed there, let it work on you slowly. Now, even when you try to read, part of your mind is wondering what's happening on your phone. You've developed what researchers call media multitasking, and it's literally restructuring your brain's gray matter, particularly in the anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for cognitive and emotional control. Consider memory, that essential thread that connects your past self to your present. In the age before digital documentation, memory was an active, living process. You had to work to remember, and in that work, you created meaning. The stories you told yourself about your past were selective, yes, but they were yours, woven from the raw material of experience into a coherent narrative of self. Now, every moment is documented, photographed, backed up to the cloud. You've outsourced memory to devices, and in doing so, you've lost something crucial, the act of remembering as a creative, meaning-making process. Psychologists have identified what they call the photo-taking impairment effect. When you photograph an experience, you remember it less accurately than if you'd simply been present. Your brain, knowing the moment is captured externally, doesn't bother encoding it deeply. You have thousands of photos you never look at, documenting experiences you can barely remember. You've traded the depth of genuine memory for the breadth of digital archives. You own a record of your life, but have lost the felt sense of having lived it. Then, there's the disintegration of your emotional life. Human emotions evolved to be processed through human connection, through talking, touching, being physically present with others who can mirror and regulate your feelings. But now your emotional processing happens through screens, through carefully curated exchanges where you present edited versions of yourself to edited versions of others. You've heard of emotional contagion, the way emotions spread through social networks. Research has shown that what you see in your feed directly affects your mood, often without your awareness. Facebook conducted an experiment where they manipulated users' feeds to show more positive or negative content and found they could reliably induce emotional states in millions of people simultaneously. Think about what this means. Your emotions are no longer solely your own, arising from your direct experience of reality. They're being shaped, triggered, and manipulated by algorithms designed to maximize engagement. Anger drives engagement, so you're shown content that makes you angry. Anxiety keeps you checking, so you're shown content that makes you anxious. You think you're just seeing what's happening in the world, but you're actually being fed a reality specifically designed to keep you in a state of heightened arousal. The consequence is what psychologist Jean Twenge has documented as an epidemic of anxiety and depression, particularly among those who grew up with smartphones. This isn't coincidental or mysterious. When you replace face-to-face interaction with digital communication, when you substitute direct experience with curated representation, when you trade depth for breadth and meaning for stimulation, mental health deteriorates. The rates of depression among teenagers have increased by over 60% in the last decade. Suicide rates are up. These aren't abstract statistics, they're the human cost of rewiring consciousness at scale. But perhaps the most profound consequence is the dissolution of what psychologists call your internal locus of control. Your sense that you are the author of your life, that your actions matter, that you have agency. When algorithms decide what you see, what you think about, what you want, you gradually become more passive, more reactive, less capable of self-direction. You develop what Martin Seligman called learned helplessness, a state where you stop trying to change your circumstances because you've learned on a deep level that your actions don't matter. This manifests in subtle ways. You find yourself mindlessly scrolling even though you hate it. You want to stop, but you can't. The gap between your intentions and your actions widens. You make plans to read more, to be more present, to spend less time on your phone, and then you watch yourself fail to follow through over and over. This isn't a failure of willpower. It's the natural result of placing your consciousness in an environment specifically designed to override your willpower. You're not weak, you're outmatched. Consider the concept of supernormal stimuli, exaggerated versions of natural stimuli that hijack our evolved responses. Junk food is a supernormal stimulus for our craving for sugar and fat. Pornography is a supernormal stimulus for our sexual drive. Social media is a supernormal stimulus for our need for social validation and novel information. And just like junk food, it crowds out the genuine article. Real conversation, messy, slow, unpredictable, can't compete with the carefully crafted hit of a perfectly worded text. Real relationships, complex, demanding, sometimes boring, can't compete with the curated highlight reels of hundreds of digital acquaintances. You're developing what philosopher Albert Borgman called the device paradigm, a pattern where you increasingly prefer the convenient, controlled, easily consumable version of experience over the raw, demanding, authentic version. You choose the treadmill over the trail because it's more convenient, but you lose the encounter with weather, terrain, the unpredictability of nature. You choose the playlist over the concert because you can control it, but you lose the communal experience, the risk, the possibility of transcendence. You choose the feed over the book, the text over the conversation, the simulation over the reality. And with each choice, you become a little less capable of handling the real thing. Your tolerance for difficulty atrophies. Your capacity for sustained effort diminishes. You're not just losing skills, you're losing the meta skill of being able to do difficult things, to push through boredom and frustration towards something meaningful on the other side. The unseen consequence is this: you're becoming a different kind of human being. Not better or worse in some absolute sense, but fundamentally different in your capabilities, your desires, your relationship to reality. You're becoming more connected, but less related. More informed, but less wise. More stimulated, but less satisfied. More efficient, but less alive. And the cruelest irony? You know this is happening. On some level, you feel it. That vague dissatisfaction, that sense that something is wrong even when everything is technically fine. That's the ghost of your unlived life, the person you could have been, haunting the person you're becoming. But awareness without action is just more sophisticated sleep. If you've made it this far, you're part of a rare minority willing to confront what most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Share this video with someone still trapped in the illusion that everything is fine. Let the algorithm know that truth, real, uncomfortable, necessary truth, still has power. Subscribe, because what comes next is the part they really don't want you to know: how to break free. We're about to burn down everything you thought you knew about reclaiming your life. The path to liberation begins with a radical acknowledgement. You cannot think your way out of this. Your mind, the very instrument you would use to free yourself, has been colonized. The thoughts you think, the desires you feel, the impulses that arise, You can no longer trust that they're fully yours. This isn't pessimism, it's the necessary starting point for genuine change. You must become, as Nietzsche has demanded, a revaluator of values, someone willing to question everything you've accepted as normal. The first act of rebellion is to reclaim your attention through what might seem like an impossibly simple practice: doing nothing. Not meditation, not mindfulness exercises with an app guiding you, not productive rest. Actual nothing. Sit in a chair with no phone, no book, no music, no task, and just exist. 5 minutes, that's all. If you think this sounds easy, try it right now. Set a timer and sit. Within 60 seconds, your mind will produce an overwhelming urge to do something, check something, fix something. That urge, that inability to simply be, is the measure of how thoroughly you've been colonized. Your practice of sitting with nothing is not about achieving some blissful state. It's about confronting the full force of your conditioning, feeling the withdrawal symptoms of your addiction to stimulation, and choosing, moment by moment, not to reach for relief. When you do this, when you genuinely do it, something remarkable happens. The static in your mind begins to settle. Thoughts that were fragmentary start to cohere. You begin to notice the difference between thoughts that arise from your depths and thoughts that are essentially echoes of your last scroll session. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are as distinct from who you've been conditioned to be. But it requires first creating space between stimulus and response, between the itch and the scratch. The second rebellion is more concrete. You must create what I call friction barriers, deliberate obstacles between you and the technologies that are rewiring you. This goes against every principle of modern design, which seeks to reduce friction, to make everything seamless and effortless. That's precisely why you need it. Delete social media apps from your phone, not just logging out. Delete them. If you want to check, you'll have to reinstall, which creates just enough friction to give your conscious mind a chance to catch up with your impulse. Turn off all notifications except from actual humans you care about. Make your phone grayscale. Color triggers dopamine responses that grayscale doesn't. These aren't tips for productivity. They're acts of cognitive self-defense. The third rebellion requires you to rebuild your capacity for depth through what I call analog resistance. Choose one activity that requires sustained, focused attention and commit to it daily. Read physical books, not self-help books about being better, but novels, philosophy, poetry, things that demand you enter their world completely. Write by hand in a journal, not tweets, not posts, but long-form thinking that takes time to develop. Learn an instrument, paint, work with wood, cook elaborate meals. The specific activity matters less than the structure. It must be difficult, it must take time, it must produce no immediate reward, and it must exist entirely outside the digital ecosystem. This is where you meet the resistance. Your brain, adapted to constant stimulation and immediate feedback, will scream that this is boring, pointless, a waste of time. This resistance is actually the sound of your neural pathways being asked to grow in directions they've atrophied. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, works in both directions. If you've spent years training your brain for distraction, it will take months of consistent practice to train it back toward focus. But it is possible. Studies of people who undertake intensive reading or meditation practices show measurable changes in brain structure within 8 weeks. You are not permanently damaged. You are, however, deeply conditioned, and breaking conditioning requires consistent counter-conditioning. The fourth rebellion is relational. You must find co-conspirators. This cannot be done alone, not because you lack strength, but because human consciousness is inherently social. We become who we are in relation to others. If everyone around you is sleepwalking through digital distraction, their behavior normalizes yours. You need people who are also trying to wake up, who remind you by their example that another way is possible. Not support groups with apps and check-ins, but actual humans you sit with in actual space, sharing the discomfort of being present, holding each other accountable not through surveillance, but through genuine relationship. Viktor Frankl observed that the prisoners who survived concentration camps weren't necessarily the strongest or most optimistic, but those who had a why, a meaning that transcended their circumstances. You need a why that's stronger than the pull of your conditioning. Not an abstract why, like be more present, but a concrete vision of who you want to become and what you want to create with your unrepeated life. Write it down, make it specific. Then ask yourself daily, did my actions today serve this vision, or did they serve the algorithm? The fifth rebellion is the hardest. You must embrace boredom as a spiritual practice, not just tolerate it, but actively seek it. Take walks without podcasts, eat meals without screens, sit in waiting rooms without pulling out your phone. These moments, these gaps in stimulation, are not empty spaces to be filled. They are the fertile void from which creativity, insight, and genuine selfhood emerge. The ancient Greeks had a concept called kairos, the opportune moment, the opening where transformation becomes possible. But you can only recognize Kairos when you're paying attention, and you can only pay attention when you're not perpetually distracted. The ultimate rebellion is this: choose difficulty, choose slowness, choose depth over breadth, being over doing, presence over productivity. Not because these things are morally superior, but because they are the conditions necessary for human flourishing as it has been understood for thousands of years before the great experiment of digitizing consciousness began. This is not Luddism or nostalgia. This is recognizing that you are the inheritor of a nervous system shaped over millions of years, and that system has needs for rest, for nature, for face-to-face connection, for meaningful work, for silence, that cannot be met through a screen. You are not trying to return to some imagined past. You are trying to become the future human who remembered just in time what it means to be human at all. And if you're still here, still listening, still resisting the urge to check your phone or click away, you're already practicing the rebellion. Every second of sustained attention you've given this video is a vote against your conditioning. Hit like. Not as a gesture of approval, but as an act of solidarity with everyone else fighting to wake up. Share this with someone who's suffocating under the weight of their screen time, but doesn't yet have the words for what they're feeling. Subscribe, because the final truth, the one that changes everything, is coming. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Your life divides into before and after. This is your last chance to look away. Here is the truth that changes everything, the revelation that recontextualizes all that came before. You were never supposed to win this fight alone. Let that sink in for a moment. All the guilt you've carried for failing to control your screen time, for breaking your promises to yourself, for scrolling when you meant to read, for checking when you meant to be present, it was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. You've been blaming yourself for losing a war that was designed to be unwinnable. The world's brightest engineers, backed by billions of dollars and equipped with more data about human psychology than has ever existed, have spent years building systems explicitly designed to override your self-control. And you thought willpower alone would be enough? This is not an excuse. It's a recalibration of the battlefield. Because once you understand that you're facing a systemic problem, you can stop looking for individual solutions and start building structural ones. The issue isn't that you're weak. It's that you've been trying to use 19th century strategies against 21st century weapons. You've been bringing contemplation to a neurological arms race. But here's where it gets profound. The very thing that makes you vulnerable, your need for connection, meaning, purpose, transcendence, is also the source of your liberation. Technology has exploited these needs by offering cheap substitutes. The way out isn't to eliminate the needs, it's to feed them with something real. Think about what you're actually craving when you reach for your phone. Strip away the surface behavior and look at the deeper hunger. You're seeking novelty because humans are meaning-making creatures, and novelty promises new meaning. You're seeking validation because you need to know you matter, that your existence registers in the consciousness of others. You're seeking escape because being fully present to your life, with all its uncertainty, mundanity, and confrontation with mortality, is genuinely difficult. These are not pathological desires. These are human desires. The pathology is in how they've been redirected toward shallow satisfactions that can never truly nourish. Here's the paradigm shift. Your soul isn't being rewired despite your humanity. It's being rewired through your humanity, through the exploitation of your deepest and most legitimate needs. Which means the path to wholeness isn't to become some stoic robot immune to desire, but to redirect your desires toward objects worthy of them. The philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Whether you interpret spiritual religiously or simply as the dimension of existence concerned with meaning, purpose, and transcendence, the insight remains. You are not primarily a consumer, a user, a data point. You are consciousness, confronting the mystery of being alive. And consciousness, when properly directed, is the most powerful force in your individual universe. This is where we arrive at the ultimate realization. The fight for your soul is not about technology at all. It never was. Technology is just the current battlefield where an ancient war is being fought, the war between forces that would reduce you to your most mechanical, predictable, controllable aspects, and forces that call you toward your highest, most creative, most fully alive expression. Every time you choose to sit in boredom instead of reaching for stimulation, you're not just breaking a habit. You're asserting the fundamental truth of human dignity, that you are more than a bundle of conditioned responses, that you contain depths that cannot be algorithmically predicted, that you possess, as the existentialists insisted, radical freedom at your core. Even if that freedom is only the freedom to choose how you respond to your conditioning, it is still freedom, and it is still yours. Søren Kierkegaard wrote about the teleological suspension of the ethical, the moment when you must step beyond conventional morality to answer a higher call. We need a teleological suspension of the convenient. There will be moments, many of them, when you must choose the inconvenient, the difficult, the slower path, not because it yields better outcomes in some measurable sense, but because it keeps alive the part of you that can choose it all. Consider this. Every great spiritual tradition, every wisdom lineage from every culture has emphasized the same core practices: silence, solitude, contemplation, presence, community, ritual, connection to something larger than yourself. These weren't arbitrary prescriptions. They were technologies of consciousness developed over millennia, tested across cultures, proven to produce human flourishing. And our current technological environment systematically undermines every single one of them. This is not an accident. An attentive, contemplative, self-possessed human is a terrible consumer. They don't need much. They can't be easily manipulated. They're satisfied with less, but experience more. From a market perspective, such a person is nearly worthless. But from the perspective of what it means to live a fully human life, such a person is priceless. The choice before you is not between technology and no technology. That's a false dichotomy and an impossible one in the modern world. The choice is between being the subject of your life or the object of someone else's business model, between using tools or being used by them, between authoring your own story or becoming a character in someone else's narrative. Here's what's at stake, stated plainly: your one unrepeatable life. The perhaps 70 or 80 years you have, if you're fortunate, to experience consciousness in embodied form. The people you love, who will die. The sunsets you could actually see instead of photograph. The thoughts you could think if your mind weren't perpetually interrupted. The person you could become if you devoted your attention to becoming rather than to consuming. When you're dying, and you will die, perhaps sooner than you imagine, you will not wish you'd spent more time scrolling. You will not cherish your screen time statistics. You will not feel grateful for the hours lost to algorithmic feeds. You will wish, with a desperation that only the dying can feel, that you had been more present, more awake, more here. The ultimate truth is this: technology isn't rewiring your soul. You are rewiring your soul, moment by moment, choice by choice, through your use of technology. Which means you can stop. You can choose differently. Not perfectly, not permanently, but in this moment, and then the next, and then the next. This isn't a call to abandon the modern world. It's a call to inhabit it consciously, to move through it without being consumed by it, to use its tools without becoming one. It's a call to remember that beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the rewiring, there remains something in you that is wild and free and unownable. Your task isn't to protect this essence from contamination. That battle is already lost. Your task is to feed it, strengthen it, give it space to breathe until it grows strong enough to reclaim the territory that was taken while you were distracted. The mystics spoke of dying before you die, confronting the reality of your mortality while you still have time to live differently. I'm asking you to wake up before you wake up, to recognize, while there's still time, that you have been asleep, and that every moment you remain asleep is a moment of your irreplaceable life slipping away. You are not a user. You are not a data point. You are not the sum of your digital interactions. You are consciousness itself, temporarily housed in flesh, given a brief window to experience existence, to love, to create, to wonder, to matter. And that consciousness, your consciousness, is the most precious thing in your universe. It is all you have and all you are. The screens will always be there, offering escape, offering stimulation, offering the path of least resistance. They will be there tomorrow and the next day, and the day after that. But this moment, this specific, irretrievable moment, will not come again. You can give it to the algorithm, or you can claim it for yourself. The revolution will not be downloaded. It will not go viral. It will not trend. It will happen in silence, in solitude, in the unsexy work of rebuilding your capacity for attention. It will happen when you choose, for the 10,000th time, to sit with discomfort instead of scrolling it away. It will happen when you look someone you love in the eye and are fully there, not half present and half wondering what you're missing online. Your soul is not a fixed thing. It is a verb, an ongoing action, a continuous choosing. Every moment is a chance to wire it differently, to bend it toward light or let it drift toward the numbing blue glow of infinite content. The choice has always been yours. The tragedy is that you forgot you had one. But now you remember. And remembering changes everything. The screen is waiting. So is your life. Choose. And if you choose your life, if you choose awareness over comfort, presence over distraction, being over consuming, then this message needs to spread. Not because it's my message, but because it's the message we all need to hear and keep hearing until we finally listen. Like this video if it moves something in you. Share it with someone who's losing the battle without knowing they're in one. Subscribe, because the work of waking up isn't a one-time event, it's a daily practice, and these conversations are part of that practice. The algorithm will show you something else in 3 seconds, something easier, something that doesn't demand you change. You know what you'll choose. The question is, can you choose differently tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that? Your rewired soul is waiting to remember what it was before the rewiring began. The revolution starts now, in silence, in you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more of such deep, thought-provoking content.